He was investigating a girl's disappearance, but found her photograph taken 10 years ago. Detective Adam Holt tossed his keys onto the cluttered desk and sank into his chair with a sigh. Rain pattered against the window of his cramped office, casting shifting shadows across the case files spread before him. 3 days. 19-year-old Laura Wells had been missing for 3 days, and he was no closer to finding her than when her parents had first walked through his door, fear etched into their faces. "She's a good girl," Mrs. Wells had insisted, clutching a framed photograph of her daughter. "Perfect grades, responsible. She doesn't just disappear." The photograph showed a young woman with thoughtful hazel eyes and chestnut hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Not the type to run away, according to everyone who knew her. Laura had left home at 7:45 a.m. on Tuesday, headed for her morning classes at Riverdale University. Security cameras had captured her leaving the house, bookbag slung over her shoulder, phone in hand. She never arrived at her 8:30 a.m. psychology lecture. Adam rubbed his eyes, fighting fatigue. 20 years as a detective, the last 5 as a private investigator after leaving the force, and cases like this still got under his skin. Missing persons were always the worst, that terrible limbo between hope and despair. His office phone rang, jarring him from his thoughts. "Holt Investigations," he answered, voice rough from too much coffee and too little sleep. "Detective Holt." It was Thomas Wells, Laura's father. "Have you found anything? Anything at all?" Adam hesitated. "I'm still working every angle, Mr. Wells. I've retrieved the security footage from your neighborhood cameras and..." "And what?" The desperation in the man's voice was palpable. "I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Could you and Mrs. Wells meet me at your home in an hour? I'd like to review the footage with you." After hanging up, Adam gathered the files and his laptop. Something about this case felt wrong in ways he couldn't articulate, not yet, but years of detective work had taught him to trust his instincts. The Wells home was a well-maintained colonial in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The kind of place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. Adam parked his weathered sedan behind Mr. Wells' Mercedes and made his way to the front door through the light drizzle. Sarah Wells answered, her eyes red-rimmed. "Did you find her?" "Not yet, Mrs. Wells. But I want to show you something." They gathered in the living room. Family photos lined the mantel, Laura through the years, from gap-toothed elementary school smiles to her high school graduation. Adam set up his laptop on the coffee table. "I've reviewed all the footage from the security cameras in your neighborhood," he explained, opening a video file. "This is from the camera at the corner of Maple and Elm, about a block from here." The grainy footage showed Laura walking down the sidewalk, exactly as her parents had described her leaving that morning: jeans, green raincoat, bookbag. She checked her phone, then continued walking. "Now watch," Adam said quietly, slowing the playback. Laura approached the corner, about to turn out of frame. And then... she was gone. One frame she was there, walking purposefully. The next frame, empty sidewalk. "What?" Mr. Wells leaned forward. "What just happened? Is this some kind of joke?" "I've checked this footage frame by frame," Adam said. "There's no edit, no glitch. It's as if she simply vanished between one moment and the next." Sarah Wells pressed a hand to her mouth. "That's impossible." "I know." Adam rewound the footage, played it again. Laura walking, Laura checking her phone, Laura vanishing. "I've sent this to a forensic video analyst to verify there's been no tampering, but preliminary review suggests this is genuine footage." Thomas Wells paced the room, agitation evident in every movement. "People don't just disappear into thin air, Detective." "No," Adam agreed, "they don't." He closed his laptop. "I need to ask you both something, and I need complete honesty. Has Laura ever gone missing before?" The parents exchanged a quick, strange look that raised the hairs on the back of Adam's neck. No, Sarah said firmly. Never. Are you absolutely certain? Adam pressed. Even when she was younger? An incident you might have forgotten. We would remember if our daughter had disappeared before, Thomas snapped. Adam nodded slowly. I'll keep investigating. In the meantime, if Laura contacts you, if you remember anything unusual about her behavior recently, call me immediately. Back in his car, Adam sat for a long moment, rain drumming on the roof. The security footage defied explanation, but even more troubling was that look the Welleses had exchanged. They were hiding something, he was sure of it. His next stop was Riverdale University. The campus was quiet in the late afternoon, students hurrying between buildings with umbrellas and raincoats. In the administration office, a harried secretary directed him to Professor Eleanor Vance, Laura's academic advisor. Professor Vance was a small woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper intellect. Her office was lined with psychology textbooks and academic journals. Laura Wells, she said, studying the photograph Adam showed her. Brilliant student. Focused, methodical. Not the type to miss class without good reason. When did you last see her? Monday afternoon. She stayed after class to discuss her research project on memory formation and retrieval. She seemed normal. Perhaps a bit preoccupied, but it's midterm season. All my students look like that. Did she ever mention any personal problems? Difficulties at home, relationship issues? No. Laura keeps to herself mostly. Has a small circle of friends, but she's not what I'd call social. Professor Vance frowned. Though now that you mention it, there was something unusual last week. Adam leaned forward. What was it? She asked about a psychology experiment from the 1970s, the Carlisle experiment on temporal displacement. It's rather obscure, not something covered in our curriculum. When I asked why she was interested, she became evasive. Temporal displacement. Time perception anomalies. How the human mind processes time under specific conditions. Professor Vance shrugged. Fascinating but controversial. Most of those early experiments wouldn't pass ethical review boards today. Adam made a note about the Carlisle experiment. It seemed tangential, but in his experience, there were no coincidences in missing persons cases. One more thing, he said. Would it be possible to look through some old yearbooks or student records? I want to see if Laura reminds me of someone I might have encountered in a previous case. Professor Vance raised an eyebrow but didn't question his methods. The archives are in the basement of the library. Marjorie, the archivist, leaves at 5, so you'd better hurry. The university library was an imposing Gothic structure at the center of campus. Adam found the archives in the windowless basement, where fluorescent lights buzzed overhead and the smell of old paper permeated the air. Marjorie, a gray-haired woman with cat-eye glasses, regarded him suspiciously as he flashed his credentials. I need to see student records and yearbooks from about 10 years ago, he explained. Any specific year? She asked, already moving toward a row of metal filing cabinets. Let's start with 2014. She returned with a dusty yearbook and a stack of student directories. Library closes at 8. Sign these out if you need them longer. Adam thanked her and settled at a table in the corner. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, or why he was looking at all. Something Professor Vance had said about time perception. The strange security footage. Or maybe just that inexplicable feeling that had been gnawing at him since he'd taken this case. He flipped through the 2014 yearbook, scanning graduation photos and club activities. Nothing caught his eye until he reached the psychology department section. And then his blood ran cold. There, smiling up from a group photo of the Psychology Honor Society, was Laura Wells. Not someone who looked like her, it was her. Same face, same eyes, same slight asymmetry to her smile. The caption listed her name, Laura Wells, Jr., Psychology Honor Society treasurer. Adam's hands trembled as he checked the date of the yearbook again. 2014, 10 years ago. It wasn't possible. Laura Wells was 19 now, in 2024. She would have been 9 years old in 2014, not a college junior. He pulled out his phone and brought up the photo her parents had given him, comparing it to the yearbook. The resemblance wasn't just striking, they were identical. Down to a small mole near her left eyebrow. Pulse racing, Adam flipped to the directory section and found her entry. Wells, Laura E., Psychology, Class of 2015, Campus Box 1172, Resident of Hayes Hall, Room 310. This had to be a mistake. A misprint. Perhaps another Laura Wells. A relative? He grabbed his phone and called the Wells residence. Sarah answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Wells, I need to ask you something important," he said without preamble. "Does Laura have an older relative, perhaps a cousin or aunt, also named Laura, who attended Riverdale University?" "No," she replied, confusion evident in her voice. "Laura was named after my grandmother, but there's no other Laura in the family." "Why? Have you found something?" "Just following a lead," he said evasively. "One more question, was Laura ever a student at Riverdale before this year?" "Of course not. She just started as a freshman this fall." Sarah's voice sharpened with suspicion. "Detective Holt, what's going on?" "I'm still piecing things together, Mrs. Wells. I'll call you if I find anything concrete." He hung up and returned to the yearbook, scanning for more photos of Laura. There were two more, one with the debate team and another at a formal dance. In each, she looked exactly as she did now, not a day younger. A chill crept up Adam's spine. People didn't stay frozen in time for 10 years. And 19-year-olds didn't vanish into thin air on security footage. Unless. The Carlisle experiment. Temporal displacement. Adam gathered the yearbook and hurried back upstairs, catching Marjorie as she was locking up her desk. "I need everything you have on the Carlisle experiment," he said. "Psychology research from the 1970s. And any records of a Professor Carlisle who might have worked here." Marjorie pushed her glasses up her nose. "The restricted collection is closed now, but," she paused, noting his expression. "I suppose this is for an active investigation. A missing student. It could be important." She sighed, unlocking a drawer in her desk. "Special collections access." She handed him a key card. "5th floor, north wing. Return this tomorrow." The special collections room was climate-controlled and quiet as a tomb. Adam spent 2 hours sifting through academic journals and research papers until he found what he was looking for: Temporal Perception Anomalies in Controlled Environments, by Dr. Raymond Carlisle, published in 1976. Most of it was dense academic jargon, but certain passages jumped out. Subjects reported experiencing time dilation and, in rare cases, complete temporal displacement. Under specific electromagnetic conditions, the membrane between temporal planes becomes permeable. Ethical concerns have been raised about subjects 7 and 12, who experienced significant memory alterations and temporal dysphoria. The university has suspended further testing pending review. At the back of the journal was a black and white photograph of the research team. Adam's eyes were drawn to a young research assistant standing in the back row. The name in the caption, Laura E. Wells. The face, unmistakable. Struggling to make sense of what he was seeing, Adam pulled out his phone and called Thomas Wells again. "Mr. Wells, I apologize for calling so late, but I need to know, where was Laura born?" A pause. "Cincinnati." "Why? And you've lived there her whole life until moving here for her to attend Riverdale?" "Yes." "Look, what's this about?" Adam's mind raced. "When exactly did you move to this area?" 3 months ago. "What does this have to do with finding our daughter?" I'm not sure yet, Adam admitted. But I think I'm onto something. I'll call you tomorrow. Outside, the rain had stopped, but a thick fog had settled over the campus. Adam walked to his car in a daze, the yearbook and a photocopy of the Carlisle paper tucked under his arm. None of this made sense. How could Laura Wells be a student here 10 years ago and also be a 19-year-old freshman now? How could she appear in research photos from the 1970s? The drive back to his office was automatic, muscle memory taking over while his mind churned through impossible theories. Time travel? A hoax? Identical relatives spanning generations? None of these explanations satisfied him. Back at his desk, he pinned the yearbook photo and the photo from the Carlisle experiment to his bulletin board, connecting them with red string to Laura's current student ID picture. The faces stared back at him, identical across decades. It defied every law of nature he understood. His phone rang, startling him out of his thoughts. Unknown number. Holt Investigations, he answered cautiously. Silence greeted him, then a soft static like distant radio waves. He was about to hang up when a woman's voice came through, distorted as if speaking from the bottom of a well. Stop looking for me. Adam's grip tightened on the phone. Laura? Is that you? More static, then, I'm where I need to be. Time isn't what you think. Laura, your parents are worried sick. Where are you? Different when? Not where. Her voice faded in and out. The experiment worked. But there are consequences. What experiment? Laura, let me help you. Can't stay connected long. The membrane is thin here, but unstable. She sounded frighteningly calm, clinical even. The loop needs to complete. I've done this before. The call disconnected. Adam immediately tried calling back, but got only an automated message saying the number was not in service. He sat in stunned silence, the conversation replaying in his mind. Different when? The membrane. The loop. The words echoed the language in Carlisle's paper. Was Laura somehow caught in some kind of time anomaly? The rational part of his brain rejected the idea as absurd, the stuff of science fiction. Yet the evidence before him, the security footage, the photographs spanning decades, this phone call, all pointed to something beyond conventional explanation. Sleep eluded him that night. At dawn, he drove to the university again, determined to find concrete answers. The campus was quiet, morning mist still clinging to the Gothic spires of the old buildings. Adam headed straight for the psychology department, hoping to catch Professor Vance before her morning classes. Instead, he found a crime scene. Campus security had cordoned off the psychology building. 2 police cruisers sat parked out front, lights silently flashing. Adam showed his PI license to a young officer at the perimeter. What happened? Break-in overnight, the officer said. Archives were ransacked. Was anything taken? We're still assessing. You'll have to talk to Detective Mercer if you want more details. Adam knew Mercer from his days on the force, a by-the-book investigator with little imagination but solid procedural skills. He found him in the basement archives, directing evidence technicians as they photographed scattered papers and broken glass. Holt, Mercer acknowledged coolly. What brings you here? Taking classes in your retirement? Adam ignored the jab. Working a case. Missing student who might be connected to some old research that was stored down here. Mercer raised an eyebrow. Interesting coincidence. The break-in seems targeted, they went straight for the restricted files on parapsychology and temporal studies. A chill ran through Adam. Any witnesses? Security camera caught something odd. Mercer gestured to a laptop where a technician was reviewing footage. See for yourself. The black and white footage showed the empty archive room at 2:17 a.m. Suddenly, the air seemed to ripple, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt. A figure materialized, a woman in jeans and a hoodie, moving with purpose to the file cabinets. Her face was never clearly visible, but her movements were quick and deliberate as she pulled files and photographed documents with her phone. Then, just as strangely as she had appeared, she vanished, not by leaving through a door, but by simply fading from view, like a television being turned off. "What the hell is that?" Mercer demanded. "Some kind of camera malfunction." Adam's mouth went dry. "Have you run facial recognition? Quality's too poor." "But we lifted some prints." Mercer gave him a hard look. "You know something about this, Holt?" "Maybe." Adam chose his words carefully. "The student I'm looking for, Laura Wells, disappeared in a similar way. Security footage shows her literally vanishing between frames. People don't just vanish, Holt. I know what I saw." Adam pointed to the screen. "And that looks remarkably similar." Mercer frowned. "Wells, why is that name familiar?" He flipped through his notebook. "Wait, Laura Wells. Parents reported her missing 3 days ago. That's the one. We should compare notes," Mercer admitted grudgingly. "This is getting too weird for my taste." They moved to a small conference room upstairs. Adam shared what he'd found: the yearbook photos, the Carlisle experiment, the strange phone call. Mercer listened with increasing skepticism. "Time travel? Really, Holt? Next you'll tell me she's an alien." "I'm not saying I believe it," Adam countered. "I'm saying the evidence points to something we don't understand. Science has blind spots, Mercer. Things we can't explain yet. Or things with perfectly rational explanations we haven't discovered." Mercer tapped his pen against his notepad. "What if Wells has a twin? Or an older relative who looks remarkably similar?" "I asked her parents. No twins, no relatives named Laura. Parents lie, Holt. You know that better than most." The comment stung, referencing a case from years ago that had ended badly, parents who had concealed crucial information, a child Adam couldn't save in time. He pushed the memory away. "There's more," he said. "The file that was stolen last night, it was specifically about the Carlisle experiment. The same experiment Laura was asking about before she disappeared." Mercer sighed. "Fine. Let's say I entertain this crazy theory for a minute. What's the connection between a psychology experiment from the 70s and a missing college student today? I don't know yet. But my gut tells me that whatever happened to Laura, it's happened before.